Moving on, dear delegates, we have our last panel discussion for today, themed as the future of well-integrated and balanced hybrid strategy. And please allow me to introduce our very eminent panel members. Our very first panel member is Mr. Khalid Jalal. He is a senior group ICT manager at GARMCO. He is also the country manager of the International Group of Artificial Intelligence. Our second eminent panelist is Mr. Abdullah AlSalem. He is the IT director at Ministry of Health, Saudi Arabia. Our third eminent panelist is Mr. Murali Mohan Thupakula. He is group head of IT, AVP IT of Digital Transformation at Hamra. Our next panelist is Mr. Gigi Thomas. He is group head IT and Digital Transformation at Ittihad International Investment. Our last eminent panelist is Mr. Deepak M Vaidya. He is the enterprise architect consultant at Telecommunications Regulatory Authority. Our very eminent panel moderator is Ms. Latifa Al Abbasi, Chief of Quality Management at Information and eGovernment Authority. Welcome all our eminent panelists, all the very best, and over to you, Latifa.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I don't know, my camera is moving. Anyway, welcome everyone to this panel discussion. I hope you will have very valuable insights through the hybrid cloud solution and model. Of course, when we talk about hybrid cloud, we are talking about balancing between cost and flexibility, between privacy and availability. And we know about the privacy now. The personal data protection laws all over the world are ensuring the privacy, like the GDPR in Europe. Here in Bahrain, we have the PDPL, and I'm sure that in GCC you have equivalent laws for that. So starting with Mr. Khalid Jalal. Yes. What are the opportunities of hybrid strategy to the business from your perspective as a senior group ICT manager at GARMCO?
Thank you very much, Latifa. Am I audible to you?
Yes.
Okay, that's the first question we always ask whenever we have a virtual meeting. Now, you're asking about the opportunities in hybrid environment, right? Or hybrid strategy.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about the current era where we're all living in right now, fortunately or unfortunately, we're all part of technology consumption. We're all using technology. So in this era, when this was the most of the companies or the individuals, they're part of the technology, they are using the hybrid one way or the other. Hybrid is not something new, and we all know about it. It has been there since very long time, but unfortunately, it was not as much marketed, just like the machine learning was not marketed earlier. Now everyone talking about the machine learning and the artificial intelligence as we are speaking. The need of hybrid was felt when we entered the era of COVID, when people start feeling if they cannot have the people on the organization or the business cannot run, they will be out of the business, people lose their job. So for the survival, they have done everything possible to go online and to find different options, be it hybrid or non-hybrid options for their survival. And there are many examples like that which goes on. Now you talked about in your query that from my perspective, now I work for a manufacturing organization. Now in ICT, we have a lot of controls. One of them is our budget. We all talk about budget, especially now since we are towards the end of the year. The corporate policies, because we need to be following the corporate policy. And one of the important things which also restrict us sometimes guide us is how the auditors, they want us to be having the controls in our organization from the IT controls which you require. Now, that becomes another challenge for all of us when we have a hybrid strategy. We need to consider what are the elements we need to include. how much budget is going to be implemented, how corporate policy will be affected, and how we can also satisfy the audit, be it internal or external audit, we need to satisfy them. Now, if you look at the opportunities which are there with the hybrid, the various, for example, if you look at the employees nowadays, earlier we had all the employees has to work from the office premises only. Now with the hybrid flexibility which have, and the companies luckily they have invested a lot on the hybrid, they can be anywhere at the comfort zone and they can start working. Now they can work even if they're traveling. You don't need to know where the people are, right? Earlier this was not possible. Everyone has to be in physical meetings. Since the hybrid concept is widely approved and accepted, it has reduced the cost of traveling and the additional cost to the organization. And those are the features which we see as the benefit of the hybrid. In manufacturing, we need to be very careful because in manufacturing industry, we have certain equipment which you use, for example, the machines, the PLC, the SCADA system. Those are the things which are very much restricted to be always held on-prem. We cannot move them on the cloud. We cannot have multiple versions of those to be kept, one on the cloud, one on the premises. Now, there we have the limitation. But whatever else is there, which is not directly integrated to the manufacturing application of the system or to the machinery, those are the applications which you can consider to be kept on the cloud, on premises, or since we are a multi-location organization, and you can take the benefit of the hybrid technology which is available. Let's not forget one additional benefit which you also see. Earlier we had the tough audit. Being a manufacturing company, we go through a series of audits, be it quality, security, or business continuity. Now, even the auditors are flexible. I'm sure most of us, my colleagues in this meeting room, they have also found it. Even they are flexible to conduct their audit in a hybrid mode. They have a team of members sitting here, team of members sitting some other place. They collect all sort of information they require, they share with each other online, and we are done with the audit even much faster than we used to do it earlier. So in summary, I think the opportunities are plenty. It's the time when everyone is into the hybrid, talking a lot, the huge discussion and acceptance of the hybrid technology. And I'm sure as we go in a couple of years, there'll be much more opportunities which will come to us.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid. I agree with you. I'm as an internal auditor here in IGA doing IT and quality audits. Now we do the audits in a different way after the pandemic. We were doing a virtual audit. And this is one of the pandemic advantage that shows this opportunity. Thank you very much. And coming to Mr. Abdullah, what about in health sector? What should be considered while building a strategy of a hybrid cloud adoption in healthcare or any other public sector services?
Thank you, Latifa. Thanks, my colleague panelist. It's a pleasure being here with you, with the distinguished delegates. Well, the cloud is a heaven for everyone, especially for small and medium enterprises. Cloud computing really enabled almost every organization, no matter what size they have, to get the advantage of having digital platforms, digital services, without having the complexity of implementing it in-house and the high budget of procuring the hardware, the infrastructure required, and getting the big team for IT to operate and to set up and to develop and to implement those services. So definitely it is a bliss to have something like cloud computing for, especially for small and medium enterprises. I think when it comes to government entities in general, and especially in our region, we have to think about the data and regulation compliance. We have to think about the privacy of the data and the transactions that those organizations are dealing with. In Saudi, there is a regulation that doesn't permit companies or organizations to have cloud services out of the kingdom. There is also classifications for cloud providers who are in the country for what kind of information they can retain on their cloud infrastructure. Regarding the strategy of having a cloud adoption, and by the way, a hybrid cloud is the most optimal model for, I believe, for the GCC and for the big organizations to move gradually to the public cloud. So hybrid will give you the flexibility to have some of your critical infrastructure in-house, and at the same time, you make use of the cloud services that are not so much critical, or the routine ones, or the ones that are business as usual services that doesn't contain or store critical information. So before we think about building a strategy for hybrid cloud or cloud in general, we have to think about the regular framework. We have to think about the vendors who are providing the cloud services, because they are gonna be partners instead of vendors. They are going to be part of this journey for a very long time. And at the same time, we have to look at why we are adopting cloud. Is it for financial reasons? Is it to cut the operations cost? Or is it to get more agility and scalability of our work, and that we are expecting more and more demands and services to be upcoming? Or is it more about the performance and having mobility and accessibility from everywhere? So those objectives have to be set up by the organization itself before we think about having a strategy for the cloud. They both have to be aligned, because with cloud, we can achieve many advantages, but we have to refine and concentrate on which one is the most important one for the organization. There are other things that are important also when we think about having cloud services or hybrid cloud, or moving some of the infrastructure there. We need to think about the long-term contracts for those services. Are we going to be locked in with the vendor? Are we going to be having it difficult to move from one provider or one cloud platform to another? Is it financially feasible? One of the cases that I have seen was that when we studied one of the cases to move to the cloud, we figured out that if we don't have the option to pay as we go using the cloud, then it's not going to be really feasible financially. We might even pay more if we go to the cloud. So having those options in consideration is very, very important, very critical. Flexibility of changes and adoption and changes even in business itself. Is it going to be possible in the cloud? We know it is more flexible to have changes and adoption on-prem, but we have to think about the cloud. Is that something that we are going to get in the cloud or not? The complexity of managing the infrastructure, complexity of managing the operations. Are the people are used to work on both environments without any problems? We need to make sure that the team is trained, they have the knowledge, they have the capability to manage two different environments and services that are interconnected between these two. So if we think about all of that, especially in the GCC, from my perspective, I believe that the better approach is to go gradual with hybrid cloud, and we should first go with the computing power, not the storage, not the critical services, but the computing power that we need, for example, for testing or for development or for staging. That computing power will offload our on-prem capability, and we can use the extra space that we have in computing perspective to have more live and production services, while at the same time we make use of the computing power in the cloud. We offload the operation, the maintenance, the support that we need for that testing and development environments on the cloud. And at the same time, we haven't moved any of our critical services, or we haven't moved the confidential information we have on the cloud. And then gradually over time, I would assume that it would take 2 years or more, we would develop and gain the knowledge of how to really work with that cloud provider, how we are managing both environments, and how we can integrate other services, whether it is a platform or whether it is a software as a service. So I think the options to have adoption of cloud computing is really promising, but we need to have it gradual instead of having it as a one move, or having it a big phase that includes critical services or products.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. So to just brief what you've said, that concentrating on business needs more than considering the technology itself is the important way of moving to and adapting to cloud. So after we discuss the opportunities and moving to cloud adoption consideration, coming to you, Mr. Gigi, what about the benefit that we can achieve by adopting the hybrid solution? Other benefits.
Thank you, Latifa, for the query. And it's great to be here in the panel. Thank you, all of my esteemed colleagues. I believe my colleagues have already briefed out a big array of benefits that we are able to leverage from having a hybrid cloud scenario. Just to add on to some of the points that our colleagues mentioned, I'd like to stress on the fact which Mr. Abdullah had mentioned, specifically about having the strategy clear. So before we onboard on this journey and before we start reaping the benefits, it's always good to conduct a maturity assessment of the IT department, of the organization within the IT landscape, so that we are clear. Like when the pandemic happened, everybody rushed in and there were n number of services that were moved onto the cloud. That was an essential. But being in a hybrid cloud and us now having the luxury of being able to move our landscape onto the cloud, it's now a different story. It's at our own pace. It's based on our budget. It's based on our roadmap for IT for the next 3 years, 5 years. There could be a factor of maybe I have done a significant investment in a data center a year or two back, and there is a factor of depreciation that comes in over there. So that needs to be factored into which solutions are moving on to cloud. So this maturity assessment exercise, I believe, is critical to every organization and IT department before they onboard onto this journey. And that was, thank you, Mr. Abdullah, for bringing that point up, because I believe that is very vital. Once that's done and the vision of the company is identified, I believe there is now, with cloud and with the number of offerings that we are able to extend to the business on cloud, and also leveraging to various apps and applications which the cloud providers offer, I believe we now as IT are able to position value to the business. When I say value, it is a direct, tangible business value. Maybe there is an agenda for the sales to be increased by 15%, or maybe there is an agenda for HR to look at facial recognition solutions. There is no touch on biometrics. They want to use facial recognitions or iris scans, or maybe there is a business case of where they want to do drones and other technology, which is feeding in pictures into a system which we can measure for a warehouse or for a yard. Now, all of this and linking with our cloud-based architecture onto using tools like Amazon or Recognition, or being vendor agnostic, but eventually linking it back to our ERP or the actual engine which is in our physical landscape. This knit architecture immediately makes IT extremely powerful, because now we are not just IT as IT, which is catering to the needs of the business. Rather, we are almost moving into the journey of being a very successful business enabler and pushing the business forward by being able to offer a various number of solutions. Other benefits which has already been covered here is dynamicity. We often get IT departments get requirements for new applications or new developments, or maybe there is project-based developments that come into play. Now we don't have to invest on a significant infrastructure upgrade. We can look at having those parts of the upgrades or those part of the infrastructure being on the cloud platform. And as also one of my colleagues mentioned, big data processing. Every data is the new oil, right? We've been hearing this, and every organization is dwelling on its data and seeing how this can complement to business efforts. So the churning of that information needs a lot of compute power, and we don't need to utilize all of that compute power in-house. We can use the cloud platforms and operate on a transaction base, or there are various tools and platforms now being available for us to utilize such compute powers. And I believe right now for the GCC, again, like my colleague mentioned, with a lot of compliance and keeping the other factors in mind, hybrid is the way to go. And I believe for the next at least 4 or 5 years, this is how it's going to be, till we have the big global players and the hyperscalers have their local presence in every country, and the governments and the private entities will start exploring having the data on like 100% public cloud, but within these hyperscalers, at least within the country. So I believe that would be the eventual journey, but I believe we are 4 or 5 years away from that. But until then, we can live with the best of both worlds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gigi. What interesting, the benefits of the cloud. Now, after finishing the benefits of a cloud, we have to think about the security security risk associated with the cloud. So let's, Mr. Deepak, what are the challenges, or what are the challenges of the hybrid cloud adoption? Mr. Deepak is here? No?
Yes, Latifa, thank you very much for having me on the board. And thank you to all the panelists, and it's a wonderful opportunity for being here with you. See, the challenges of being on a hybrid cloud, I can classify into 2 things. One is my design or architecture level challenges, and another one is the operational challenges. So if we have to talk about the design and architecture level challenges, first I have to make it out that on what level of readiness for the migration I'm standing on as an organization. See, for example, we can take the CMM maturity model for that one, cloud maturity model for that one, and I can mark on when I'm on a certain maturity level. Here, the challenge is when I have to start the planning for that one, the biggest challenge is for me is the legacy applications. So if I have to move all the legacy applications, if I have to become a completely cloud-based IT ecosystem, then I have to make a value proposition to get a legacy system onto the cloud, which is very difficult. This is one of the biggest challenge, because when I say I have to get a legacy system onto the cloud, I need to look at the application architecture, the solution architecture of that particular system also, whether after moving it to the cloud, whether it being a public cloud or a private cloud, whether it is able to cater with the same performance and with the same results. That is the biggest challenge while at the designing phase. And at the designing phase also, like we need to have a data classification. being when we started, for example, in the TRA, we had adopted a strategy 5 years back that we are going to be focusing on being a process-oriented organization. So when that is there, the data is data and the processes are being shared. When we have a shared processes, what data we classify, what can be shared, and what can be kept on the cloud, and what can be kept within the premises. That identification, if we do not have a proper data models with the classification, like what is a classified data and which can be shared and which cannot be shared, and what are the roles and authorization levels for that one. If we do not have a perfect matrix for that one, without having all those things, if we attempt to move a legacy application or a system which involves that kind of sensitive data, that may become a future bottleneck for us, or it may become a security threat as well. So these, for this one, what I mean, if we have to talk about the way forward, or just to think about a way forward about this one, is as an enterprise architect, I emphasize on transition architectures rather than a target architecture. Suppose say we have an as-is architecture of our entire IT ecosystem. Now, why emphasis on transition architectures is, see, technology is offering many new things on an every day-to-day basis. For any businesses, if they want to have a competitive advantage, rather earlier, just to have a sidelined sentence, IT was known as an enabler. Okay, with the advent of hybrid cloud and the related technologies, IT is no more enabler. IT is not just an enabler as of now. IT and the cloud can be, pace changer for the businesses. Suppose say if a business is able to, effectively take the advantage of all the technical advancements the cloud is offering, any of the cloud platform is offering, it can take a huge competitive lead. So considering that in mind, if I have proper transition architectures which are made in consideration with the latest contemporary technologies that are available, that can give a good lead to our business, and it can take the business to a proper position. I'm talking this for the businesses which are in basically into a neck-to-neck competitive areas. Okay, and then coming to the operational challenges. See, the operational challenges, what I can think of the biggest challenge for the once we are onto the cloud is of a data sovereignty. It's again a regulatory thing. There might be some regulatory aspects which may avoid us to take the data, our data onto the cloud, which may, suppose say as an architectural and my plan taking certain system to the cloud platform may give me a huge cost advantage and competitive advantage, but there may be a regulatory aspects on data sovereignty which I may not be able to take that one. I already have those kind of scenarios within which we operate now, but for the sake of confidentiality, I would not like to name those systems and all those things. So that is one thing. And another thing is, if we have a multiple or a hybrid cloud scenario, which the subject itself is there for today, we have to, the challenge between getting the good performance could be, again, it depends on how we architect our solution, is the latency between the two different cloud platforms. In case if there is a communication between two of the systems and two of the processes, and how do we arrange a payload arrangement between the two transactions between two multiple clouds, that could be one of the challenge, and it depends on how low latency based application we do develop. Now it brings back us to the design phase when we want to, when we start planning our migration to the cloud, all our legacy applications and bespoke applications, whatever we will be having as an organization, we have to plan in such a way that they are low latency supporting applications, so that once we have a requirement for end-to-end processes, so which may span between multiple cloud environments, there might be a low latency communication, and they will be able to work on that low latency in a perfect and efficient way. Okay, and then further and last other challenge I see is the communication. Suppose, say, if I have to have a communication backbone. Now, if I have a multiple cloud environment, suppose, say, I am on Google and I am on Azure and I'm on AWS and I have some things on-prem also. Now, if I want to have an enterprise bus, so which is the best place to have that enterprise bus? That becomes the key question, because suppose, say, if I have an ERP on, I can give you an example. I mean, just an hypothetical example, that I have a Dynamics 365, which is best suited on Azure cloud to have a software as a service. So that I have it on Microsoft Azure and some of the legacy applications on AWS, where I took the infrastructure as a service and I have running on my AWS, and I have some confidential applications which are on-prem. Now, there is a communication between when we say ERP essentially will have a financial transaction with all other systems. Now, which is the best place for me to have my enterprise service bus? That becomes $1,000 question or a $10 million question, and to be resolved. And to resolve that one, it takes a lot of effort to consider for a quite long future also. Say, when I have to plan that one, I have to plan for maybe for next 10 years or 15 years. And when you do plan that one, but the technology will not let you plan for that long time. So that's a big challenge.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you one question about what you said about the enterprise architect. I think as an auditor of IT, I always think about the enterprise architect as an engineer, the engineer of the house. Like we say, if you design it properly, it will not crash, the house will not crash. So I think if we invest in our enterprise architect, we will reduce all of these challenges for the future, even in the operation. And if you agree.
Of course.
Okay. Mr. Murali, let's from your experience, if you allow me, ask you about the risk associated with the hybrid cloud.
Yeah, the risk, thanks guys, good evening all. Thanks for having me here, discussion with all good colleagues and friends. Yeah, the main key risk, which we faced during, as part of my experience during Hamra, as other people said, rightly, all these hybrid, everything is started during the pandemic. Anyway, it was there in the previous, but the need of the hour has come as part of the pandemic. But what issues we were facing is there were so many legacy applications, as they mentioned, but where to take it? There are some applications some antivirus and other solutions which is available on the cloud as well as in the on-premise solution. So which option you need to pick and choose? So that was a big debate. So obviously everyone is moving to the cloud by having so many advantages and disadvantages. But advantage side, we were thinking it's a maintenance is the key thing, and then security wise issues will be resolved, and then the high availability. So based on all these things, we took a action plan and then moved to the cloud. But such applications like ERP, so that's still it's a big question to the entire industry, right? So every ERP they are offering the on-premise as well as the cloud versions. But anyhow, at one point of time we need to move to the cloud. So because we are using SAP as our ERP, so SAP is very strictly coming onto us and saying that 2025 maximum, like, we are not going to extend support for on-premise. So everyone should be ready for hybrid solutions, right? So that's where it's typically the business case preparation, all these things which we are already doing it in order to justify the budgets and then the cost comparisons and, like, the high availability of the systems and also the effectively the cost saving, how we can save the cost, that has to be justified. So as part of, like, this we are doing as a critical exercise. And normally, like, everyone, we feel like, it's a moving to the cloud. Sometimes, like, it's a little risky because based on the nature of the industry, because of the nature of the product, what we are using. So, but ideally, like, we are in the world, we already started the journey, like, of course, at least another 5 to 10 years, this journey is going to continue to maintain as a hybrid cloud, at least, like, till the processes get matured, the infrastructure get matured, the leadership style will change, like, obviously, because, like, that there is first question would come from the leadership is, like, if you want to pick up any cloud solution, where is the data center? Is the data center is in UAE? Then I'm ready to go. Like, if the data center is in Germany, no boss, no, I'm not ready yet now. So let them come here, then we will do certain things. So that's the reason, like, we are also thinking, and, like, at least 5 to 10 years this journey will continue for as a hybrid. Then maybe, like, entire solutions will be available on the cloud or hyperscale model. There are certain ERP solutions which are already available, and infrastructure also coming, like, nowadays it has evolved a lot. Every solution is coming as part of, like, just pay as you go. But still there is a catch to that, like, there are so many terms and conditions. If you see any cloud pay as you go, you can, like, it's a very crystal clear, but at the same time your team should have the knowledge of, like, to review that how much utilization have been done. Like, otherwise you simply keep paying the bills, you never know, because it's a, as per the contract, it's a standard. Whenever it is higher, you pay higher. Whenever it is lower, it is lower. But still we should have a mechanism in place to measure it properly before signing off the payments, all these things. And apart from that, like, there are certain things which we experienced last year was, like, uh, there is some, suppose as part of the Microsoft O365 migration, we have file server already, which is, like, 10-year-old, 12 years old data is there, confidential data was there. Is it worth to migrate to the SharePoint? Okay, if it is worth to migrate SharePoint, what is the guarantee? How we cannot access outside from the organization systems? So these things, like, literally it will sometimes like, give you the flexibility. At the same time, it will give you the additional work, right? Because we need to implement the DLP. We need to implement two-factor authentication. So many security solutions we need to be implemented in order to secure the data. And also, like, some departments, they clearly say, no, I can't do that. No matter what you do, what security you bring in, I can't do. So all overall, like, we are paying, like, we are maintaining the internal file systems, as well as we are doing, like, the SharePoint implementation and then maintain it there. So that's where there is some duplicity of the work also involved when you are using the hybrid approach. So that's where, like, we should be very careful enough, like, pick and choose which. See, for the companies and the leadership teams, they don't mind, like, this is my business case for you, this is my, like, a project for you, whatever you want to do it. But when it comes to the nitty-gritties, really we need to think through, like, it's what is advantage, disadvantages, what is the network. As other colleagues rightly mentioned, like, each and every time, whenever the new initiative is coming, whenever you are trying to move away from on-premise to a cloud or these kind of options, when you are looking, always need to reassess the network infrastructure diagram. because some applications you may need to retire, some you may need to continue, some you may need to duplicate it. So we need to have a roadmap in such a way, like, at what point of time I can retire this system, or at what point of time, like, I will upgrade completely and move to the cloud. Yeah, that's all from
Thank
mine.
you. Thank you very much. One of the things that just hit my mind that you said it's worth or not. So gap analysis, comparison between the value and the risk is very important before taking any decision. So coming back to you, Mr. Khalid Jalal, as a member in the International Group of Artificial Intelligence in Bahrain, how can we use the AI to enhance the cloud security?
Okay, let me, since you put the initial title with me, I have to be very careful to whatever I say, but let me be honest what I'm going to say. Now, when you say the cloud security, now, how much clouds are secure and how much our on-prem infrastructure are secure? And that's the challenge we've been talking about for years and years and years. I remember at the time of my studies, my professor told me, if you don't know the answer, write something about security, you'll get 2 marks out of 10, and that's enough for you because you're not prepared. But that is not the question. The question is how prepared we are for our security. And is there any end to the security? Can we say we are secure? The answer is no. Now, we've been hearing a lot about the security in terms of the virus. Virus attacks happen to this organization, to this university, to that organization. Are we hearing that anymore? I think the answer is no, or very rare. Now, what are we hearing about is mostly the cybersecurity, because the maturity level which has come in antivirus applications or the engines and the data which they have collected, the experience they have built into the software or the engine has made it so stable that we are not talking much about the viruses. Now the new trend has come in, which is the cybersecurity. And cybersecurity becomes so vast that everyone is talking about, am I secure? They don't talk about the virus attack or anything. They say, I'm secure from cyber attacks. And everyone, any conference, you're going to talk about cyber security. Coming to your point on how AI can help in securing ourselves, be it on premise or be on the cloud. Now, AI works basically on certain mechanisms, right? AI is an overall subject, but the way it works is basically works on the machine learning and the big data. Putting all this together, a lot of analysis, algorithm which goes inside, it helps basically the tool or software to understand what type of data is coming, what type of traffic is coming, from where the traffic is coming. Is it coming from a trusted site, coming from a non-trusted site? I put all this combination and parameters together and say, yes, this is something I need to stop, this is something I let go. AI was there, as I said earlier in my statement, and is booming right now. And AI security is also another thing which is booming, right? Are we supposed to go to any vendor and collect the AI product or solutions? If you ask me, I will say no. Now, do we trust our partner? We talked about, all my colleagues in the panel, they say, when we talk about our partner, they are basically AI. The vendors, they're not vendors, they're partners. So similarly, we need to make sure that who is our partner when it comes to security, especially AI. Now, because the cybersecurity is very much in demand, all the people who are into cyber attacks, they have come up and developed so many applications. And they have put a lot of organizations who are selling those software, telling the people, this is the right software for you. And in the back end, they're basically having a lot of open holes, and they can come to environment and see and steal whatever they want. So if we talk about AI, I think we need to be very serious about this subject. We need to have a country level or maybe GCC level, since we're all from GCC over here, kind of a board which analyze all the AI-based security solutions come to this region, to monitor them, to filter them and release them. Yes, this can be sold or can be used to this market. It's same like when you have an Apple application on download, unless it is monitored, verified by the Apple, you cannot download it or can upload it to the Apple site. Similar mechanism needs to be done. Yes, AI is maturing. The organizations like Microsoft, we just heard, they've spent billions of dollars in securing their Azure cloud. And if they have anything to do with AI, it's also part of the investment. And we benefit because we're part of the Microsoft services. It is enhancing, but we need to be very careful who is our partner in security, be it AI security or non-AI based security, the traditional. We need to protect ourselves and we need to spread the message across everyone that yes, explore all these options, but not at the cost of not knowing who is providing the solution, and not at the cost of what other damages it has come. Have you analyzed it? Have you done your due diligence much in advance? If yes, with a trusted party like Microsoft, like AWS, if you go and buy from them, yes, well and good. But if someone who just come in from any other country and you don't know them, my answer is please take a step back, review the entire thing, get the references from the government levels, whether the organization is the right partner for you. Then only your AI can work for you in securing your infrastructure. That I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid. So we have to be careful about AI application that we use. This is a good advice that we will consider.
Yeah, just want to add one more thing. You know, in Bahrain, since you're also from Bahrain, in Bahrain we have the government level unit which is separately monitored by the Minister of Interior. They only look into cybersecurity. And they IGA, and along with them, they guide, by the way, for everyone's benefit, IGA and the other unit which you have who works on cybersecurity, they regularly monitor all the attacks which happens in the country or anywhere around the world. They get all the reports and they distribute it to all the organizations. Personally, I get a lot of inputs from them, and I go and check my environment whether this particular threat which is being identified, is it available in my environment? Do I need to fix anything in my environment? Because if something is non-stoppable, if you don't have the right department, so the tools are really focused and monitored it in the right way. They should not be the commercial vendors who will say we are monitoring it. It should be a government level authorized body who's monitoring it, like what we're doing in Bahrain. I think IGA and the Minister of India are doing a great job to protect the countries and the organization's interest. Thank you, and back to you, Latifa.
Thank you. Okay, coming to you, Mr. Abdullah. Again, if you can share some of your thoughts about what we really need to start in deploying the hybrid cloud. I think we've already discussed these topics, but you can just summarize some of them.
Yes, well, I think it is a journey. I think planning and putting things on the ground to go to the cloud is a long journey, and it has to be well planned ahead. One of the things that I think is very important to set up and to do it properly before moving to the cloud is to have a data strategy, and to have a data governance, and to have proper classification of your data, so that when you refactor your services or you want to choose from which ones to go to the cloud, you can do it easily. And you can also, as my colleagues mentioned, minimize the risk of having data leaks or having any compliance issue. Second thing is cloud. You are at the same time running your existing infrastructure, and running the existing infrastructure also takes some investment. In servers support and operation up and running. It takes the licensing cost, and we know that many of the deals that in infrastructure and in data centers, they are good deals if you take them 3 years or more. So when you are thinking about planning for next year, what you are going to do in the infrastructure, and at the same you plan your infrastructure and data center investments, not now and not next year, but 3 years from now. What should be moved from CapEx to OpEx, and what is expected to be discussed down the road. Third is we need to do a very, very comprehensive assessment of the existing infrastructure services. So as not new, many of the solutions and technology will be found not useful anymore. They are either
Okay, I think Abdullah had disconnected, so let's move, inshallah, and go to Mr. Gigi again. What about Mr. Gigi, if we talk about e-transformation innovations, how we can achieve them through hybrid cloud solution?
Sure. So I believe in our discussions, we covered very many vast topics in terms of benefits, challenges, risks, things to look out for. I think I'll spend the next few minutes just to share some use cases for our audience on what we have been toying around with for a while. So we are a very diversified group. We have manufacturing, trading, contracting companies, we have medical companies. So many of these companies come with its own fair share of issues. So we have companies with 5,000, 7,000 employees. And one of the big challenges we saw there was timesheet management, which can be a very tedious exercise with numerous amounts of paperwork. And we embarked on this journey to see how IT can contribute to that business by automating the entire timesheet procedure for all of the projects for that entity. And we used a combination of facial recognition, QR code, embedded with GPS and geotagging in the different locations that were scattered for the projects, all of that feeding back into our HR and ERP systems, which gave us near 98% accuracy with no human involvement from scan till a timesheet generation. So now this kind of a use case, if we were to do it in a traditional way, I'm not saying you can't do it, but what would happen is you would have to invest on significant amount of infrastructure in your backbone to enable. We have ready solutions on cloud. So we leverage what's there, don't reinvent the wheel, join the dots together and give an efficient solution to the business. One another interesting use case we've been toying around with is we have very many employees from different nationalities. We have blue collar people who do not have the luxury or the know-how of how to operate a self-service, for example. So we've been toying around with a very interesting functionality where through WhatsApp, they can in their own language query through their registered mobile number on what's their leave balance or what's their, can they apply or book for a leave or have a salary advance. So these are still prototypes, but what we've been playing around with, but it's all using a standard Alexa translation engine and which moves these queries back to our system. And of course, we're giving back on when it gets converted from their local language to an understandable language. Likewise, the response goes back to them in their local language. Small things, but again, I would like to have the focus on because it's cloud and because the technology is available, we are able to leverage. We have factories, we have old factories, some of them, which do not have, I believe my colleague Khalid is also from manufacturing. do not have SCADA system capability or PLC capability. So we've been playing around with industrial IoT, where you have vibration sensors and speed sensors and temperature sensors. And what it does is, beyond a certain variation of threshold, these sensors will send alerts and notifications to the system, which will auto-generate a work order, which comes to the team. And immediately you are shifting from a reactive maintenance mode to more of a proactive or even a predictive maintenance mode. Analytical engines, the cloud has got umpteen amount of analytical power that you're using, and it's just so vast on how you can utilize the analytical engines to benefit. There are tools like Splunk. I mean, there are interesting case studies what certain airports have done, where they were even able to measure the utilization of water and electricity consumption and been able to reduce by 15%. All of this is because the technology that's available today for us to link and integrate and leverage is massive. So I just wanted to pop the balloon for everybody to especially our audience, to see there are many use cases we are able to deploy and take benefit out of the hybrid landscape. Thank you.
So, interesting. So cloud and technologies make our life easier, faster, rapidly more. So a lot of benefits for that. Before we wrap up and thank everyone, we have to come back to Mr. Abdullah. I think you did not finish your, Mr. Abdullah? Okay.
Yes, very sorry about that issue. I will just try to assume it up. I was talking about what it takes. So
Yes.
I think we've talked about 2 points, and I think the last one is also very important one to do before actually moving to the cloud, which is doing an assessment, a full assessment of the existing infrastructure, services, and solutions, including their feasibility with the business. I'm sure if that assessment is done on a large scale, we would find a lot of solutions and services that are not needed anymore. We will find some solutions that could be merged together. We would find some solutions that could be replaced for better ones on the cloud as a software as a service. And as some of my colleagues were saying, we might have ERP on-prem, whether it is Oracle, SAP, or Microsoft. And we are now seeing many other options on the cloud, different ERPs that could be even more feasible for some of the businesses, even though they are not big enough, but they could be more feasible. So that's an opportunity for replacing some of the expensive and the continuous that a solution that needs continuous support and licensing. So after doing that assessment and coming up with all of these categories, different categories, I think they're gonna be a good plan to know which ones to go first to the cloud, which ones to be replaced down the road, and to have better planning for the legacy systems that you cannot move to the cloud or cannot get rid of, but to some kind of offloading them and keeping the core functionalities of it. So I think having these 3 things will definitely give a better way forward to move to the cloud without having a lot of complications and to really get the advantage and benefit of it.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. Thank you, everyone, Mr. Khalid, Mr. Deepak, Murali, and Gigi. It was a very interesting conversation with you. I'm sure that everyone have a lot of insights to share and information. Thank you very much, and hope that we see you in the next event. And thank to all of you for your contribution in Bahrain Hybrid Cloud and Data Center Summit 2021.
Thank you, Latifa. Thank you,
Latifa.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
all.
Latifa. Thank
Has
you
been
very
a
much.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget.
Well, what an insightful and thought-provoking our last panel discussion has turned out to be. It indeed was really great to hear from your experiences, case studies, and of course, knowledge. I would like to thank all the dignitaries present here, Khalid, Abdullah, Murali, Gigi, Deepak, and our eminent moderator, Latifa, for your valuable contribution towards the Bahrain Hybrid Cloud and Data Center Summit 2021. And discussing the topic, the future, a well-integrated and balanced hybrid strategy in the best way possible. I'm sure your suggestions, opinions, and recommendations on hybrid cloud infrastructure will be extremely beneficial to our delegates. Thanks again for your time, efforts, and association with us. Have a nice day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.